Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. There's our buddy John Steppe with the Cedar Rapids Gazette. We'll get to him in just a moment. Sean Bock from CBS Sports, 24/7 Sports, will join us in the next segment, and we'll close out, as we usually do, with our buddy Scott Pritchard, Scotty P. from Las Vegas, talking numbers and doing very well. And if you follow him at pritchardspicks.com, you'll be doing very well, too. So, John, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
You're very welcome and good, thank you. John, of course, is the Iowa Hawkeye beat writer for Hawkeye Athletics for the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Gazette.com. And again, with all of my guests, and John is no exception, you'll see all his information at the bottom of the screen along with mine throughout this program and throughout the segments. So, John, as always, let's get right to it. Less of me, more of you. You were at the presser yesterday. What did Kirk Ferentz say? What did the players say? What are you saying?
Well, most significant news probably out of anything is the latest with Noah Shannon. Of course, the defensive lineman who's been out this entire season with a sports gambling suspension. He has been cleared to practice. The NCAA last week announced that it will re-examine the sports wagering rules that resulted in Shannon's season-long suspension. Of course, there's no guarantee what the NCAA will decide.
Yeah. Or when.
Exactly. The when is the big variable right now. But this is a good step for Noah Shannon. It gives him a couple weeks, especially with the bye week coming up, to get really ready. The NCAA said that they expect the final vote to occur at the end of the month, so that would theoretically potentially pave the way for maybe a return against Northwestern. But still a lot to see on that. From injury standpoint, Nick DeYoung and Addison Ostranga both have a chance, was what Kirk Ferentz said to play. Caleb Johnson was back last week. He's all good to go. Jazian Patterson, he will not play. Deshaun Lee will not play.
Darn it, yeah.
Yeah, and Caleb Brown, who is out for quote-unquote personal reasons, is back to practice this week. So that's a little bit of good news for Iowa amid, it seems like, a growing list of injuries and absences.
Everybody plays with them. We know once that foot meets the ball, game one, somebody's injured all year, all day, every day. Obviously, we know no Cade McNamara, no Luke Lachey, but let's talk about Cade McNamara's replacement, Deacon Hill. Not the best numbers, but a win is a win is a win. Now he faces his former team, the Wisconsin Badgers, where he was last year. He talked a little bit yesterday about saying, I don't want to get overamped for this game, but I also don't want to be underwhelmed. I want to be just steady Eddie. Hopefully that's the case. Talk a little bit about Deacon Hill.
Oh, yeah. So it's this weird position of, okay, they have a really good record. They have a really favorable schedule. They've been doing it in really ugly ways. And as you said there, a win is a win. But against a team like Wisconsin, it's going to be harder, where you're not going to be able to get away with some of those throws that Deacon Hill was able to get away with last week when you're playing at Wisconsin in a hostile road environment. That's not an easy place to play. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Deacon, as you said, trying not to make it bigger than it is or any less than what it is. But I'm sure there will be probably some emotions there as he's pulling up to Camp Randall Stadium, someplace he's very familiar with. He needs to do better than what he's done if Iowa wants to really have a long-term chance in terms of, this isn't very sustainable when you look at the numbers. How many teams with a 46% completion percentage go on to win 9-10 games? The answer is very, very few, if any.
John, this, as you're smiling with me, I'll just say it. I really think this is going to be, and I don't think I'm overstating this is for the Big Ten West.
Yeah, and you look at it, if Wisconsin wins, they get a 2-game buffer over Iowa plus the tiebreaker.
Yep.
That's really a tough road to overcome. Yeah, and Iowa takes the lead, on the other hand, if they do win. Yep. And they do have that tiebreaker over Wisconsin with a very weak schedule up ahead, where none of their future opponents have won against a ranked team this year. So really, whoever wins this takes a firm command. It's not totally insurmountable. You can look back at 2021 as the perfect example of that. Iowa wins out the rest of their games. Wisconsin stumbles against Minnesota on the last day of the regular season. Iowa goes to Indianapolis. But if you were to put odds on those things happening again, you don't really bet on that. So it's, really can kind of set the course for how the rest of this Big Ten West goes and what postseason opportunities could surmount because of that.
Normally when you have a players meeting, all heck is breaking loose. But in this case, it was just like, hey, let's refocus. Let's get back after it. Talk a little bit about what the players were saying about that on defense.
Yeah, it's just a matter of playing for each other was kind of the message that Joe Evans and some of those other defensive leaders were really emphasizing. Because as much as they try to say that they tune out the outside noise, that's a lot easier said than done. I think I'd have a hard time probably tuning out the outside noise if there were 15 reporters writing about everything I was doing. So that was kind of the big message there, and it really speaks to the luxury that they have in terms of leadership on this defensive line. You got a sixth-year senior like Joe Evans. Noah Shannon, also a sixth-year senior. You've got fifth-year senior with Logan Lee. You've got a lot of experience there on that defensive line that you can really turn to kind of rally the troops there. And, of course, that wasn't the only thing that led to the 6 sacks. Also, Hudson Card held on to the ball for much longer than a lot of the other quarterbacks that Iowa has gone up against.
And I want to say a quick congratulations. I mentioned his name earlier. For his first career interception, Jay Higgins. That was pretty cool stuff against his home state team, Purdue.
And he dropped one earlier in the season.
You're right.
That, ironically, he actually has a friend who's a GA at Purdue who is giving him a hard time about not picking up the interception. And he is saying, yeah, Purdue now knows Iowa's Mike linebacker can't catch. Well, maybe he can now.
Yeah, amen to that. So let's transition to Beth Getz. I thought Lisa Bluter's comments were very on point. And Lisa Bluter, speaking of glowingly, said every coach in this facility is behind Beth Getz being the full-time athletic director, taking the interim tag off. Let's talk a little bit about that. Your thoughts, what you're hearing through the walls that in and around the complex there.
Yeah, as Lisa Bluter's comments at Big Ten Media Days really spoke to, she has a lot of support from throughout the building. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who are really enthusiastic supporters of Beth. She really has not been dealt an easy hand. Yeah, and one of the probably the more publicized things that Beth has done is really improve the relationships from an NIL standpoint. So that has been a really big thing, but that's not been the only thing. Yeah, you really just can't find somebody around Carver Hawkeye Arena, around really anywhere, who can say a bad thing about Beth. You talk to people from her past, from her present, they have all really spoken glowingly about the type of leader she is, a servant leader at heart. So we'll see come early 2024 what Barbara Wilson decides to do. She has spoken briefly, very positively of Beth Getz at last month's Presidential Committee on Athletics meeting. So she has seemed to be positive about what she's been seeing. But yeah, overall, a very strong start for the first 2.5 official months for Beth Getz.
Yeah, and I like that when you said that, and I didn't want to talk around that because, again, setting up this crossover at Kinnick, but you mentioned the gambling investigation. She came in guns a-blazing. I mean, with some pretty tough things facing her initially, and I think you've really hit upon something with the NIL. By the way, congratulations to Caitlin Clark inking a national and a big deal with State Farm. So she's got Hy-Vee, Nike, and State Farm, along with her idol and one of her buddies, Patrick Mahomes from the Chiefs. So, not just for Caitlin Clark, Beth has opened it up, as you mentioned, a relationship with NIL for all athletes. So I couldn't have stated that any better. John, thank you so much. It was great seeing you again.
Yes, great seeing you too.
He is John Steppe, beat writer for Iowa Hawkeye Athletics with Gazette.com. Again, you've seen John's information throughout this segment at the bottom of the screen along with mine, and throughout the program you'll see that for our guests as well. Be sure to take special note of that. If it moves along kind of quickly for you, just freeze frame it, and Gazette.com for all of John's handiwork as well. So for John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara and Hawkeye. We'll be back with more on Sean Bock in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here's our buddy Sean Bock, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports affiliate, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes athletics program, recruiting expert. But Sean, great to see you. How you doing?
Dave, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Truly my pleasure, and thanks again. So, Media Day. We record this on Wednesday afternoon, October 11th. Media Day in Minneapolis, Target Center. Women on Monday. The men yesterday. Let's start with the women first. The crossover at Kinnick, hopefully weather permitting, this Sunday at Kinnick Stadium. 50,000 plus, they're saying. Be the largest crowd for women's basketball. We just had the Nebraska Volleyball Classic a little over a month ago, and setting records there. Pretty cool stuff, but also pretty cool for Caitlin Clark signing a national advertising NIL deal with State Farm. So now Hy-Vee, Nike, and State Farm even more cool for Caitlin, not just the NIL or the money and the exposure, but with her buddy and her idol, Patrick Mahomes from the Chiefs. How about that?
This weekend has a chance to be a pretty good weekend for Iowa fans. A pretty cool one, too. I mean, you mentioned the crossover at Kinnick, and then obviously Iowa's game up in Camp Randall. So should be a pretty exciting weekend, and hopefully the weather holds up for Sunday because it seems I think there was around 50,000 tickets. I think I talked to someone this weekend that said there was around 48,000, so it's upwards in the 50 range, which is pretty good, and that's a heck of a crowd for a women's basketball game.
Yeah, and nothing really earth-shattering coming out of from what Lisa Bluger said. It was pretty cool to see Hannah Stolke going into her sophomore year. She was one of the representatives for the team, as well as Caitlin Clark, of course, and then Gabby Marshall coming back for her 5th year, so pretty cool stuff there. Cool all the way around. I guess we'll use that word again, but I was really happy to see Lisa Bluter, or happy to hear, and John Steppe and I talked about this briefly in the segment before you and me here, that she gave her sterling endorsement, again, like most coaches and people in the facilities at the University of Iowa Athletics, and her support of Beth Getz. So that was about the only other thing that I wanted to mention with women's basketball, besides Sunday's preseason matchup against DePaul, and their star transferred from DePaul to LSU, so it's not going to be the marquee matchup we initially thought it might be, but still going to be a fun day. So let's transition to the men's game. And Fran McCaffrey, I thought, had some interesting comments. I thought Patrick McCaffrey, so it was Peyton Sanford, Tony Perkins, and Patrick McCaffrey were the player reps for Iowa, and of course Fran McCaffrey, the coach. But I thought Patrick was very open and talked about his vulnerability and his struggles, and I thought Fran had some interesting comments. I loved Peyton Sanford also saying, he kind of touched on it last year when he was on this show twice last year, but about the transfer portal, he wasn't really sure. I think his quote, and I don't want to misquote him, but in effect, he basically said, I'm not sure about the transfer portal, but I love the guys we got. Something like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Iowa feels the same way, too, because you look at some of the situations in college basketball and college football. Yes, you can get talent from the transfer portal, but you got to find a guy that fits your team from a personnel standpoint. We also got to find someone who fits, from a chemistry standpoint. And that's why I think Iowa loves what they brought in Ben Krikke and Evan Bruns. There might have been a couple other guys that they might have wanted to bring along. I mean, Jordan Miner ended up going to Virginia. There was obviously Grant Nelson from North Dakota State who went to Alabama. 2 guys that they would have loved to bring in along with Krikke. But I think from a culture standpoint and a fit standpoint, I mean, Krikke averaged 20 points per game in the Missouri Valley with
was the MVP of the Missouri Valley last year, right?
With a bad Valpo team. So he had to do a lot of work. And the talk around him is it's like he hasn't missed a mid-range jumper this fall. So
keep it rolling.
Yes, it's only 2 points, but a lot of his damage was done around the basket. But he does a lot of things off the dribble well. Can see the floor really well. Fran McCaffrey has constantly talked about how he's 6'5" or 6'9", 245, 250 pounds. So, yes, there was maybe some concern that maybe he wouldn't be able to compete from an athletic standpoint in the Big Ten. But I think you can slot him in that 4 or 5 spot on defense and not really lose a beat. And Iowa really has talked about the depth they have on the interior too. I know the backcourt situation is obviously a strength right now, and then a couple of shooters on the outside with the Sanford brothers and Josh Diggs. Patrick
we've got plenty of guys who are going to throw chuck up threes.
Yeah,
so,
but the depth on the interior is something that Iowa has really not had, and I think
you're right.
The balance is going to be a really, really important thing.
And think about this: what you said about Coach Bluter and the Bluter's bunch and the women's team, and Fran McCaffrey mentioned this repeatedly, and you and I talked about it 2 weeks ago when you were last here with me. We're the Hawkeyes in college basketball, pro basketball in a general sense, men's basketball specifically, has gone away from that back to the basket guy like Luka Garza. We noticed even Luka's game evolving and changing in his last 2 years at Iowa, where he was shooting more threes or as you mentioned, deeper twos like Krikke. So, the back to the basket guy, it seems as though, to your point, that depth on the interior but also outside is really going to play well, and that Philip Rebracha type with Bronze and Krikke, as you mentioned. Yeah. Maybe that's the way of the future. It sure appears to be that way. And Fran's guys, as we know, Fran likes to have his guys get the ball off the backboard and get it out and run.
Krikke's a guy that can run the floor too, and he's a guy that you can use in dribble handoff situations. You can put him in, ball screens. He can guard the 4 or 5, I think, pretty well. But they like what he can do off the dribble and how he's able to see the floor and how effective he can be. And also being a lefty, there's a little bit of an advantage to that because it's unique. There's not a ton of lefties at that point, and guys that are are that mobile too. So having him there, I think, is going to be a really good plus for them.
I think that's going to be interesting too, is to see how some of these younger guys like Dembele, like Freeman, like Harding, but especially Freeman that you've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, Evan Braun said with Owen Freeman, he's a back to the basket. You got to be ready there. Dembele, he's just so strong and so physical. So those are the two highlights. I mean, I think Freeman's more poised to have a bigger role this year than Dembele, but they really like Dembele from a strength perspective and, the upside that he has. He's working with Tristan Spurlock, who, is a big interior post kind of guy. New assistant on the Iowa staff, was recently promoted. And then I actually wrote something on Harding earlier this week or last week, and then I wrote about the point guard situation last night where Iowa has talked about potentially going, maybe 3-guard lineups in certain instances.
Yeah.
And, with someone like Brock Harding, obviously he's more of a pure point guard, same thing with DeSante Bowen. But they like how they can be flexible with those guys and have multiple guys that can handle the ball and also shoot the basketball. I mean, I would rely maybe more on Josh Dix to shoot the ball from 3, but Tony Perkins has proven he can hit the outside shot from here and there. Brock Harding's, not Jordan Bohannon, but they have similar skill types and how, they can make shots off the dribble. And then DeSante Bowen's more of a slasher type, playmaking type point guard, but they're really trying to get him to, be able to hit that outside shot when he's open.
And experience from last year helped Bowen as well, so we'll see how he brings us forward. But, folks, again, as I mentioned throughout the program, all of Sean's information when he mentioned his past work, and we're going to get back to recruiting with you in a couple of weeks. Recruits coming in. I was going to say, you've always got that mill hopping. But, Sean, thanks again, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me.
You're very welcome. For Sean Bock, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more to close out the show with Scott Pritchard. Going to talk some numbers inside Vegas with our buddy Scott Pritchard. Scotty P. Back with more Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara in just a few moments.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seed company that's chasing technology or a seed company that's writing a book on it? Mershman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. There he is, our man Scotty P. Scott Pritchard, as you know, Pritchard'sPicks.com is a sports betting expert from Vegas, but he's a Northeast Iowa guy. He's from my home area up in the Claremont Valley of Elgin. Now it's North Fayette Valley High School, but I'm from Postville, so Scotty P and I go way back. Scott's been doing great in his business for 30-plus years out where all the big fish swim. And Scott, great to see you again. Thanks, as always, for joining us. Week 2 in our voyage here, but going to continue on every week with you. The numbers are key, my friend, and I want you to talk a little bit about a contest you're in. Our friends at Circa, the largest and best sports book in the world and casino, the D and other things they have in their properties, now in the Midwest, online or via the app, but also in Chicagoland area. A lot happening in your world. You're in that invitational special invite for the world's top sports bettors, yourself included, and I think you're still kicking tail. Aren't you in the number 2 spot, or did you catapult the number 1 this week?
Well, it's by invite only, as you said, the world's largest and the world's best sports book, Circa. They have the World Championship of Sports Betting, and I was fortunate enough to be invited. And out of 16 professional sports bettors handicappers, I'm right now in 3rd place. I'm 1 game out of 2nd and 2 games out of 1st. That's the good news. The bad news is I've got 13 people chasing me, and the field is so strong. What's kind of cool, Dave, about this contest, Circa, they have a couple of other contests you have to pay to get in. This contest, we're playing for the infamous green jacket, bragging rights, and $25,000 cash, but they have the Circa Survivor where it's $1,000 per person. They have over 9,200 people in that, in addition to another 5,200 people in the Circa Millions contest versus the point spread. So you're talking about 14,000, 15,000 contestants putting up $1,000 each to compete for some real money. This contest is the World Championship by invite only, 16 of the world's best. So yeah, A, I'm honored to be invited. B, I'm in it to win it. Forget 3rd place, man. Let's win this green jacket.
Atta baby, I love it. The Masters, so Masters Golf has a green jacket. This is the Masters of the sports betting world. And for folks, some of the names I've mentioned in the past, I'll mention again. You may be familiar with Stanford Steve from ESPN, also Chris the Bear Felica, formerly of ESPN, now Fox Sports, but most importantly, our good buddy Scott Pritchard. And Scott, again, pritchardspicks.com, and we feature all of our guests' information at the bottom of the screen throughout their segments, so be sure to go there, pritchardspicks.com. It's postseason baseball time. You're doing very well there. You're also doing very well with NBA regular season starting, NHL, the WNBA playoffs. Oh, by the way, the NFL, college football. You are crushing it in all aspects. I'm a Bear fan. You and I have talked off the air about this. Your free pick last Thursday, you picked my Bears to cover. Not only did they cover over the Redskins, as you're smiling, they won. So, my friend, again, I want all the viewers to know, if your 52.4 is the average to be correct, to make money, my man here is in the high 50s, 59.4%. So he's crushing the average, making money, and as Scotty likes to say, see the cashier. Ring, ring, see the cashier. I was so happy to see you pick my Bears. I was just a little sketchy on that, but go into some of your mindset on that. Why the Bears, and why did you pick them to cover? And, of course, you won again, as always.
Well, I want to back up because you and everyone else, you have a team, you have a specific team. You tend to be a fan. You tend to be emotionally attached to whatever team you might be a fan of. And that's fine. I get that. But like you said, your Bears. Well, the thing is, it took some courage to step up to the bet window and bet a couple of dimes on the Bears plus the 6.5 points. But again, to my point, every day and twice on Sunday, I bet value. I bet numbers. I do not bet teams. I can make an argument for any team if you give me the right number. Now, if I really knew what I was doing, I would have taken the Bears on the money line at a big fat plus. But the fact is, they won 40-20. It's amazing. It's been 7 days. I've made about 45 bets since then, but I just can't get these numbers out of my head. But yeah, Chicago plus 6.5, winner, steak and lobster dinner. I love it.
I do too.
Can't get enough of it.
Amen. And you keep doing what you're doing and making our viewers happy as well. Scotty offers free picks as well as other picks. Again, pritchardspicks.com. That goes back to our point from last week, and I'll restate this every week or as regularly as we can. Scott will not always bet on the Hawks game or pick the Hawks. As he just mentioned, it's value. If you bet on a prop like a George Kittle, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, Sam Laporta for the Lions. Of course, Kittle and his Niners are just crushing it, but so are Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end from Iowa. With the Lions, they're doing very well. He had 2 touchdowns. So the tight ends right now, that's why they call Iowa Tight End University, Scott. But props like that, I want you to talk a little bit about numbers as you talk about, please.
Well, it's specifically called prop betting, player prop betting, and a lot of times the sports books will flat out limit you, me, and the homeless guy off the street because there is a perceived value in betting props. And part of the reason is because the odds makers, their job is a lot tougher than mine. They have to post a side total, money line, prop bets, live bets on a myriad of games. On a given Saturday, there's 80 college football games as an example. There's 5 ways to bet it. That's 400 ways to bet it. So respectfully, they don't really keep a bird's eye view or one eye on the props. That's why they limit you. But to my point, that presents some real value. And when you talk about Kittle and some of these former Iowa Hawkeye players, I, again, being born and raised from Northeast Iowa, I keep an eye on the Hawkeyes, the Cyclones, the Panthers of UNI. Great fond memories growing up on a farm in Northeast Iowa. So, I'm telling you that I follow this. I do this 24/7. I love what I do. Fortunately, it's provided a great lifestyle. I travel the world. And the great thing is, from a professional sports betting standpoint, I can actually do this when I'm at the Conrad in Pattaya in Thailand. And I'll be going back again after the Super Bowl simply because after 6 months, it's usually pretty darn lucrative, the sports betting part of it professionally. But after 6 months of grinding, I need to get away, clear my head, clear my mind. And Thailand is always calling.
I love the fact that you went into the detail and the grind of your day. A lot of people think, it must be nice to live the life, but you really do. And folks, I wish you knew what I know and what Scott let you in a little bit. People think, I could do what he does and I could do the numbers he does. Not for a living, not the way this man right here as he smiles. But the naysayers and the people that will say that. It's, again, like the gentleman last week who said, wow, that's only 59%. That's not good. uninitiated, but when you take a look at the raw numbers and what this guy, Scott Pritchard, does, unreal, and I'm glad you stated that. It's a full-time job for you and very stressful, but very lucrative if you do it right, and you do it right as always, my friend. Pritchard'sPicks.com. Scotty P, thank you so much. I look forward to catching up with you next week. I would say best of luck, but you always have it, so keep it rolling, my friend.
Luck is the residue of design, and the harder I work, the luckier I am. Love the show. Love you. Keep up the good work, Dave.
Thank you, Scott. Love you and love the work you're doing. Look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you so much. He is Scott Pritchard, Pritchard'sPicks.com. I am Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. I want to thank Sean Bock, also John Steppe, and thank you, the viewers, as well as my production partner, Michael Merrick. So for Hawkeye, that's all from me. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.